what is your take currently on representation globally in various countries, as well as Kenya's representation in esports? Like, what was your perspective on it beforehand, and what's your perspective on it, now that you've been into it, you've been getting more notoriety, you've been getting more publications and interviews and stuff. How is your perspective on the scene sort of transformed?
Initially, when I started out, I just to give a bit of a background, I really didn't settle to be some esports star. I just joined professional gaming because I thought it was cool. I felt challenged when playing fighting games, especially Mortal Kombat and Tekken, and I wanted to improve on that. But I really didn't think that people were interested in listening to diverse voices, because when I saw esports and gaming, I thought these were things for white or Asian men. And then when I joined Tekken, I just did it because I love Tekken and I wanted to learn how it was to be, play professional Tekken and compete at the highest levels. Then I didn't expect that an American esports team will take a chance on me, an African/Kenyan woman. So now that I've begun to grow my brand and become a better Tekken player and a content creator, I'm actually surprised to see that more and more people are starting to be interested in listening to Kenyan/African voices and see how the rest of the world competes against America, against Japan, against Korea, and it's really awesome to see. And something that I even find more surprising, because now Arslan Ash put Pakistan on the Tekken map, so the fact that guys are interested in seeing what's out there, it gives me hope that sooner or later we're going to have Kenyans and Ivorians and other African countries on the Tekken Tour and other events.
Yeah, and that is a great kind of comparison that you made, comparing, Arslan Ash with Pakistan, which is amazing that there are so many diverse groups of people around the world that play Tekken, that play video games, but only recently have they been getting some sort of comparable, spotlight and acknowledgement. Even your accolades, even your achievements, even your sort of publications that you've gotten before, we talk, it helped me get to know you, what I mean, and get to know about you. So it's really amazing that sort of, that sort of juxtaposition is there. Do you have any ideas on why so many countries are not represented in esports or represented in global gaming, even though they play video games just as much as everybody else?
Okay, from the bit of research done, I think why we don't see many diverse voices in esports and in gaming is game developers don't really build the servers with, I'd say other countries in mind outside of, North America and the EU. And you see, when let's say register accounts like PlayStation and Activision Blizzard, and these are the accounts that we create, our data ends up reflecting on servers that are built in the EU or in North America. So it kind of gives the representation. So it kind of gives this, gives this impression that, outside of North America, and the EU, no one really plays video games. So when you start to complain about these issues, that's when they get surprised, hey, we didn't know that there was a scene out here in, let's say, in Africa. We didn't know there's a scene in Pakistan. We didn't know there's a scene, just to say from my own personal experience. And moreover, sometimes the media isn't really fine the impression that they give of Africans and of countries like the Middle East. I think from the advertisements that I see in North America about Africa, it kind of gives the impression that we're all about poverty, war, death, corruption, etc.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting that you bring that up, and I'm kind of curious, when did you decide, okay, I'm going to, when did you decide to professionally take on, esports to take on like being a representation of Kenya? Like when did that happen? Because did that ever feel like that was daunting to you, that was almost impossible? To give you some background on where this question is coming from, when I was in elementary school and even high school, I loved video games. That was like the number one thing that I was doing. But even me, because of who I saw on television, I didn't think that it was a realistic thing to pursue. I didn't think it was a cool thing to pursue. I thought it was like, very heavily gate kept, and maybe to some degree it was, but that it was very secure, that there was no way that I didn't have a voice there. I didn't have a say there. I could only play the games. Right. And now I know that, those sort of dynamics and those narratives are changing, the opportunities are changing, and I can insert my own ideas into the metaverse, so to speak, for lack of a better word. So I'm curious to know, did you feel like that as well? I was born in the States, did you feel like that coming from Kenya, or were you just like, hey, there's not a lot of competition here, or there's not very few, I can just make my own wave? How did you feel about, pursuing that?
So as I said earlier, I didn't really like set out to be an esports star. I just joined gaming and esports because I thought it was cool and I loved it. So let me just say, to be honest, it just happened. The moment I got signed to my first team, Exit Gaming, I really didn't think it was like a particularly big deal until I first saw an article that one of our newspapers here in Kenya called "The People Did on Me." The title of the article, I remember, was "The Gaming Queen," and I got that article sent to me by my cousin, and I remember that day it was during my contract law class. So I wasn't paying too much attention. I was just I left my data on, and then my cousin sent that WhatsApp message with the article. Then more media houses started paying attention to me, but these were mostly media houses that were locally based here in Kenya. But now in 2019, that's when the BBC Africa did that feature on me, and
right.
it really blew up on Twitter, and I remember the Ivorian community like really pushed it. Then I didn't expect that also them guys in the US would be really interested, and so much that even Anakin gave me a shout out and saying that he was proud of me. So I was like, bro, that like kind of really like at the back of my mind, I knew I had to now be a good representation of my community, because now more eyes are getting in, more eyes are now on the African scene, and people want to hear our stories. So that's when I decided I need to start doing better in Tekken. I need to, be the best, like, Black excellence kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. And how has it been? How has the whole journey been for you, just overall?
To be honest, I'm going to say it's not been the easiest journey. By nature, I'm actually a really introverted person, and it's been a bit of I'd say it's been a burden, but in a weird kind of way, but not that it's not in a bad way, but it's been a challenge because, I've had to, I've now been given the challenge that I have to be the best that I can be. And at some point it's kind of been a scary kind of transition, but as I said, it's challenged me to be better.
Wow, right. And what you've done is just really incredible, and we're glad that you take it on that challenge. What are kind of your goals for the next couple of years, considering travel's kind of bound up a little bit, but you've been making strides. You've continuously been in everywhere you can be, right? Tell us a little bit about the plans for the future.
So I'm going to answer this in a different kind of way. I've realized there's a difference between goals and objectives. So my goal overall is to be, I'd say, a better person, a better competitor. That's what I've realized I should take away from video games. But objectively, as an objective, I want to actually start traveling more and, challenge myself to see where I measure up with the rest of the world, in terms of being a Tekken player, and, keep pushing the QueenArrow name out there and pushing my community, highlighting my community. So those are kind of my objectives. And as I actually want to be, I want to be the Shayu of Africa. Like, I want people to recognize my gameplay, because I know I know the kind of strides that I can make if, I put a little bit of more effort in improving my gameplay.
Right.
Yeah. So hopefully, hopefully with this new variant of COVID, it doesn't shut down travel again. So hopefully next year, I hope to see you guys in the States.
100%. Yeah. And go ahead.
And the EU. Yeah, in the EU. And other, wherever my plans will take me.
Yeah, and you recently got to go to the EU and do a show match with Kayane. How was that experience? It seemed like it was a lot of fun, and you guys had a good back and forth. How was that whole experience, being in the EU for the first time?
Honestly, it was really exciting. After South Africa, the French embassy called me saying that, the French government and Okitani Esports, Montpellier, had invited me for the show matches. So I was excited to actually travel to, for the New Africa Front Summit and the Okitani Esports Expo. So I actually got to meet Kayane. She's, the most awesome person I can think of, and it was actually an honor to meet her. And Definitely. So I got to talk with her, and after show matches, she asked me a few questions. She asked, she asked me how old I am, how long I've been playing Tekken, and she also told me about her own experiences. She started playing when she was 9, but started traveling out and competing when she was 19. So she told me, like, she just said, enjoy the experience and enjoy the journey, and the nerves will disappear with time. So I shouldn't be too hard on myself. And then she took me on a tour of Montpellier with one of her other colleagues. So I really had fun, and I'm honestly now pumped to start competing more.
Yeah, I could imagine like getting that co-sign from her and getting those words of wisdom like really kind of boosted your, your drive, right?
Yeah, it definitely did, because I realized it's never that serious. I think something that I feel we forget when we about esports is primarily we should be having fun. They're just games at the end of the day. But sometimes I feel with the whole, the esports thing, we kind of put our mind on the clout and the fame, the money, so much that it kind of takes out the fun, takes away from the experience overall. It should all be about having fun and pushing ourselves to be the best that we can be.
Right, definitely. And I know that you kind of think deeply about, real issues, real world issues, and sustainable sort of solutions to those issues. And I'm curious to know, like, how do you think esports could become more sustainable, or how are you strategizing to make, your career in the next Tekken game or whatever, strong and solid, right? Like thinking of, coming from, a place where, the representation is kind of growing and developing. And we know that even some of the best players in the States don't really have that infrastructure around them. I know that you've talked about, and we've kind of talked about developing that infrastructure in other countries that do not have as much representation. How are you thinking about going into 2022, the next Tekken game, whatever, and strategizing, your experience and career in law, et cetera, et cetera? Like, how are you balancing those things to make esports work in your lifestyle at this time?
So what I think that could be done to make esports a more sustainable career, I don't think we should transition entirely from our tradition, the traditional kind of, we shouldn't do away with the traditional degrees, because I
Right.
think how we can build we can build the structures to support all of us and, retain the diverse talent that we have is, I think guys should stick, go to, if you have the money and you have the means, go back to school, get that education, because I feel it can actually be used to build the foundation, a more sustainable foundation. Like, let's say if you did business in school, I'm sure there's a way it can transition into esports, like, the business of esports. For me, with my law degree, I feel that I'm not going to be playing Tekken forever. I'm not. I'm gonna reach an age where I won't be able to compete with the newer generation. So we need to start building I'd say regulations, and build I'd say ethics and laws that make sure that the scene is that is ethical in how we conduct our business. Because I was actually talking with one of my mentors from the Lagos Esports forum. He was telling me that by the time that we're retiring, we need to leave the space in a way that we don't have sharks among us, people who are just out to exploit players and their talent. I don't want, let's say, my siblings or anyone who's gonna come after me saying that, QueenArrow, you are here in this space, you travel the world, you ate, you dined and you ate with at the big people, but you never did right by us by making sure that this, the scene was, I'd say, run more ethically. So you sold us out. I don't want something like that in the future, because they're going to be angry at me and they'll have every right to be. So I want to leave this space better than I found it, better than I was starting out.
Thank you for that. And that's a beautiful answer. I'm curious, do you feel like you're more invested in the competitive aspect of esports, or you're more invested in the infrastructure aspect, or is it equal? Because I feel like when I hear there's like two parts of, your personality when it comes to gaming. I hear the competitive, you that wants to win and dominate, become the very best you can be. And then I hear this other part that's like, I want to leave something for the people who come after. I want this to be a culture and community and environment where people aren't being exploited for their talent. Like, I hear that almost as much, if not more. What side pulls you more, motivates you more, or do you draw from both sources?
I draw from both sources, because I don't think I don't be disingenuous by saying that I'm only a competitor. I'm a multifaceted person, and that's good and that's fine. I studied law, and once I started getting into competitive gaming, I realized that there are gaps that need to be filled, and it would only be right for me, who's one of the pioneers of African esports, to make sure that by the time I'm retiring, this space will be, a much more ethical. I'd say it's a much more ethical space. If I'm being honest, I really hate politics, but as I said, I see these problems and I can't pretend that I don't see them. And my conscience won't allow me to, my conscience won't allow me to start, compete and dominate, and then I just leave the space with all these, with all these gaps and issues that need to be, rectified.
Hmm. Yeah, and we're going to be supporting you, every step of the way as you, are empowering yourself and empowering others to, find solutions to, making things, more effective and making it a better place overall. You talked about, the multi aspects of who you are and your personality. Let's talk a little bit about that law degree. And congratulations for graduating this year. Can you tell us about, why you decided to get into law?
Okay, first of all, thank you for the warm wishes. It was an easy graduating, but I managed to do it. Why I decided to pursue law? Another bit of my background is I'm kind of from a legal family. My dad's a lawyer. My brother's a lawyer. And two of my cousins are also lawyers, and then I have actually two other cousins who are doing their undergrad. So there's that bit of influence. Then second of all, I actually wanted to do international relations because before I got into esports professionally, I actually wanted to have a diplomatic career, and I actually wanted to do the whole like work for the United Nations, be a badass diplomat and all that jazz. But my dad actually told me I might be better off first studying law, then specializing in diplomacy. But that changed when I got into esports and saw these issues. I decided if I'm going to do my master's, I'm going to pursue sports law.
You say you're going to do your master's, you're going to pursue what?
Sports law.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. So is that kind of your main goal right now, is to, study law to, protect athletes and deal with athletes?
Yeah. Yeah, this is like my whole like backup plan. Like, as I said, once I decide I don't to like professionally game anymore, I want to at least put the knowledge that I have to good use in making sure that we have regulations and making sure that the law is favors consumers when it comes to in-game microtransactions. Right. Protects consumers, and then also make sure that athletes aren't don't get themselves into bad deals. So there's the whole interpretation of contracts, arbitration, and legal litigation that also needs to be done.
Right. Yeah, that's really cool. So when you studied law, you were mainly just trying to get into the work of protecting the athletes and things like that. Was studying that difficult? Was doing that law degree? I mean, you said it was definitely challenging. Tell us a little bit about that grind and the long nights staying up and doing homework. Did you enjoy it overall? What's kind of your recap on that experience? I mean, you just finished a couple months ago or last month.
So yeah, it's law is not the easiest degree in the world because it has a lot. You need to have a reading culture. You have to always be reading your books. You have to always keep in touch with current affairs. And let's say sometimes you might have those days that sometimes you're doing late nights doing your homework, especially if you're one of those who postpone, procrastinates until the very last minute. I was guilty of that habit at times. And then COVID broke out last year. So, that I think we took 2 months off school before we started doing our stuff online. So now I had to make sure that I finished all my exams. Last year I had 13 exams to do. So I actually had to put, esports in the background briefly to make sure that I did my exams. Then this year it was all about doing my dissertation. In the United States, you'd call it my thesis. So it was really difficult because I had to do plenty of research into my paper because it was about microtransactions and how Kenya's laws don't reflect the reality of technology. The law hasn't caught up with technology, and that needs also to change. So I had to do a lot of research. I had to take trips to Nairobi to make sure that my supervisor was happy with my work. So it was really difficult. But once I finally got my final signature from the head of department, I was super relieved that I finally have this in the background.
Right. I kind of think when you talked about, going to, Nairobi to do research, I've been playing Halo Infinite a lot recently, and they have a stage there. A lot of the stuff from the Halo games takes place in Africa and Kenya. And it's just really interesting. I can really imagine, especially with the work that you're doing in the next couple years, really, I can definitely see Africa having a much larger presence in esports, like on the same level as US and South Korea and Japan. I think Pakistan, Middle East, Africa, like the rest of the world, could be like a lot more represented. I think it's slowly happening, you know?
Yeah, I'm happy to see that people are trying to make those concerted efforts to make sure that representation is there. But I feel overall this is something the FGC and the gaming and esports fraternity at large need to acknowledge, that we can do much better when it comes to representation and creating us safe space and holding space for, I'd say, minorities who aren't represented as well.
Definitely. What can creators do? You know, just the average person that's playing games on, on the weekend, they're on Twitter. What can they do to be more proactive in getting these sorts of changes to happen? Because I think that's a problem. Like, people feel as though they're not empowered. They feel like there's not much that they can do as far as, representation, if they're not the ones that lack representation. So what can other people do you think?
From what I've observed, I think we also need to ask ourselves, why aren't the minorities represented as well in the space? I know this apart from, let's say, the creators of these games and content creators as a whole, I don't think they want to make the mistake of speaking out as if they know our experiences, because that can be a mistake that can, I'd say, be fatal. And on top of that, I think the answer to also the question why we don't have minorities in the spaces, we have to call a spade, and there's a toxic element of the FGC and the esports space as a whole. We tend to, I'd say, other let me use, and I'm using other in quotes, we tend to other people. Like, if you're not white, if you're not male, and you're not straight, we tend to drive people out by calling them all manner of names, by doxing them, and just being generally unfriendly. And that means that we need to acknowledge that this is a problem. And the first step to solving a problem is acknowledging that it's there. And the moment we make that acknowledgement, then we can take the next steps and ask, what can we do better? That means, like, holding space in terms of retweeting, I'd say, minorities, buying from them, and uplifting them as a whole. And if it means also creating, I'd say, leagues that, let's say, like, for example, I know Kunoichi is part of the CGL, the console gaming league. If it means creating leagues where, let's say, for example, women can compete safely and without too much, I'd say, unneeded scrutiny, I think that would be ideal, until it reaches a point where we have minorities that are in this space and are comfortable. Then we won't have a need for these kinds of leagues anymore. Those are just my 2 cents.
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of what Arcade Press is about. It's our show is kind of bringing a variety of voices onto the show and getting different perspectives and getting them to talk about things beyond just rating games. When I was younger, I used to think, oh, if you were going to get into the game industry as a writer, you would basically just have to like rate games on a scale of 1 to 10, and that just seemed way too restricting. You know what I mean? And I feel like in the same way that you approach the game, you're not just approaching it on the competitive level, you're approaching it on the like community level, like giving people opportunities, giving people new perspectives. What kind of new perspectives have you gotten just since going pro? What are like some of the big life lessons or things that you've learned just diving into this new, this new world?
Okay. To be honest, I think this year is when I've like had to like really reflect about the kinds of lessons that I've learned. I've learned that it's never that serious. I think I learned this lesson after my trips to South Africa and to France, that you just have to take it easy and you just need to just enjoy the journey. Sometimes you can be so hungry for, I'd say, success, and you sometimes like lose like you kind of lose sight of what's important. And I needed to realize that my growth as a person and just enjoying the experiences is what's paramount when it comes to professional gaming. And number two, I did deal with a serious harassment issue part of last year and part of this year. And I realized that you need to surround yourself with with people who love you and are going to support you. And at some point, you need to stop giving, I'd say, credence to the noise. If the noise and the nastiness that people have to say about you, it doesn't fit with your overall goals and objectives, you just block it out. And I also learned that you're going to face negative experiences, and you shouldn't say that you don't need to. I shouldn't have to go through this. This is life, and unfortunately, life isn't fair because people have made it that way. But negative experiences are going to be there, and you just take it for what it is and move on. And at some point, you also have to be jealous of your body of work. Be protective of it, and don't allow people to take away from the efforts that the concerted efforts that you've made to grow as an athlete and as a person. So be protective of that.
Right. Own your masters, right?
And not just masters, even just like the efforts I've made to grow as a competitor in Tekken. I realized I needed to be also protective of that, and that's something I actually learned from Cuddle.
Really? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it was just a brief conversation that we were having on Twitter, and she mentioned she was just asking how I was doing, and then I told her like a bit of what was just going through my mind at the time. And then she just she gave me this advice about being protective of your body of work.
Right.
Yeah.
She's really wise, for being so young, and that's definitely one of those things that we need to talk about more, and not just the creative arts, the musician. We hear that a lot in the music spaces, but it also goes for content creation, esports, the gaming spaces. Like, own what you labor and protect it, right? So that's really powerful that you had that conversation with her. I'm curious to kind of go back a little bit about what's your experience with amusement gaming centers and arcades in Africa. Was your first experience with that PlayStation 2 or console back in the day with gaming, or like did you experience some like smaller gaming centers, fairs, arcades in Africa before you got a chance to play on console?
So okay, on this one, my memory is a little bit hazy. My brother might be able to tell me more if I asked him about it, but I do remember that there used to be some gaming centers around here, back here in my hometown. I'd say since I'd say I'm from I've lived in privilege. My dad he had the money to buy us a console. So I remember outside of that cartridge console game that we have these DVDs and we had this disc that had these old school games, Super Mario, Contra Chopper, Pac-Man, if I recall correctly. Then then he also had an old computer back in his office that he wasn't using, so he brought it home. Then we had these Ducati racing games, and we also installed Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter on it. Then my brother convinced him to get us a PlayStation 2. That's where my interaction with Tekken, the Tekken 4 demo disc, Tekken 5, Mortal Kombat once again, Tomb Raider came in. I got these experiences. Then finally in 2016, I recall he bought us a PlayStation 3. Then now he finally, once I got signed to Exit, he finally got me a PlayStation 4, which I've been using since then.
Dope. And what's your favorite console in your favorite game?
Honestly, I feel the PlayStation 2 era was undefeated because
Of course.
I think this was the time that game developers made games with a lot that had a lot of heart, that had a lot of rich and rich stories.
Right.
It, honestly, I can't really pick a favorite game, but there's Tomb Raider: Angel of Darkness that I really enjoyed playing. Um, then those I don't know if any of you played this game called Headhunter. There was that, and then those Ape Escape 3. I think I'd have to rate those three games among my favorites. Then maybe a close number 4 might be Tekken 5.
Definitely. Tekken 5 is, of course, a classic. So I know the Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness, but the Headhunter, do you mean Manhunter or there's one called Headhunter?
There's one called
Manhunter.
Headhunter. I'll have
Okay.
to look for the disc. I'll have to look for the disc around here, and then I'll take a picture. But I'm not sure many people played it.
Yeah. I was able to pull it up and it's got like a guy on a bike. So there's some vehicle action going on, right?
Yeah, I remember there was a bit of that, but it's been, Jesus, I think it's been over 15 years, so I don't really have many clear memories of that game, but I just remember playing it and also watching my brother play. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, there was something about that PS2 era, right? Like it was just a special time for gaming that we haven't really been able to get back to. You know, when you bought a game back then, it just everything was on that disc. What you bought is what you got. There wasn't really any DLC. You know what I mean? It's just like a very nostalgic for that era, of course.
Yeah, I think you just put it perfectly into words. I think the moment the bottom line became more important than making stories with rich experiences, took precedence. That's when I'd say we don't get as many good games as today, because it's like developers are putting out games for the sake of making money, and selling
Mm.
DLC and microtransactions that don't really
Mm.
make sense.
Yeah, well, you did that dissertation on the microtransactions. What did you find? I know you mentioned that it doesn't really represent the reality. Could you talk a little bit more about your dissertation, because it's very relevant into the type of stuff that we talk about here on our K Press?
So what I did was, I think I got really passionate about this whole microtransaction issue after I saw what EA did with Star Wars Battlefront 2. So what happened is one of my schoolmates sent me this Reddit post and then he asked, "Have you heard about this issue?" Then I saw that the title of the Reddit post was, "Seriously, I paid $80 to have Darth Vader locked."
Mm.
Um, so then I started doing more research. Then I was actually shocked, like, the audacity of EA. Like, how do you create a full priced game and then you're all
Right.
giving people the full experience? Then then I saw that one of your US representatives of, is it Hawaii? Yeah, Chris Lee, brought out this issue to the Congress, saying that the game, a lot of games nowadays are grooming children to become gamblers, because they don't have the emotional capacity to process the whole gambling,
Mm.
of pay to play aspect of video games. Then
Mm-hmm. Or pay to win.
yeah, then I think last year or in 2019, Senator Josh Hawley he wanted to introduce an act that would make basically random games of chance illegal in the United States. But I know your current law, the threshold of, I'd say, gambling is different according to the state that you are in, if I recall correctly. So I know the Massachusetts might have a different threshold, the state of Maryland, etc.
Right.
And and I feel, then I also did research into the EU. Belgium banned any AAA game that would have, games of chance, and they actually made it a crime for any publisher to, to create games of, with random chance purchases. I saw the United Kingdom had that conversation, and overall, what I concluded in my thesis is that the thing is we need to start having these conversations. And I saw that Kenya, the problem is that our laws haven't, don't match the reality, because a lot of our lawmakers and policymakers are old. So when you even start about the topic of video games, they'll give you a blank look, or they'll just even be outright hostile, like, what are you doing playing things that are for children? And the funny thing is, here in Kenya, our constitution under Article 46, we actually have the capacity to protect consumers in, even in virtual economies, even as they're playing video games. It's just that we haven't started having that conversation yet. And it's important that we have that conversation. And I saw that why we haven't started having that conversation is because, for one, I don't think people even realize that that there might be potential consumer rights violations in video games, or they just don't know that we have, we have laws on the books that can protect them. So once we start, having that conversation and making people aware, and we have the relevant government bodies making people aware that they have rights even as they interact with virtual in-game economies, then we'll even start updating our laws to show that technology and the law needs to be go hand in hand.
Right. So it sounds like your primary focus in that field is just getting people to start being aware of the legislation and potential legislation around these types of, predatory sort of practices, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Then I think even in future, I hope we can see that we actually have our own regulatory bodies, because I know the US has the ESRB, the EU has PEGI, but we haven't seen, like, for Kenya, we don't have any regulatory bodies, so we end up using let's say the ratings that PEGI and the ESRB have given these games. And sometimes I don't feel sometimes we can't use laws that have been made for, let's say, the American audience. We can't use laws that have been made for an EU audience. We need to have laws that have been created bearing in mind our own practices, and our traditions and circumstances.
Right. Yeah, that's like a whole, like, deeper conversation I feel like that we need to have you on in the future, is like talking about the processes of lawmaking, and how government bodies or political bodies can be more sensitive, or be more tasteful, contextualized to the people that they're serving. You know what I mean? Because sometimes we think it's like one size shoe fits all, or one law can apply to anyone in any place, and that's not always the case, right?
Exactly, you've put it into words, like, just you've summarized it, like one size shoe can't fit all of us.
Right, definitely. And I'm really interested in, to see how this sort of discourse develops, and anything that we can do to kind of help push that or bring attention to that, definitely let us know, because it's something that needs to be talked about. You know what I mean? Like, no one likes predatory microtransactions. No one likes paying more for a game, even though they've already paid for it. Yet there's not a lot of like deep conversation about, is this ethical? Is this legal? What places are these things not legal? Like, we're just not talking about it on a deeper level, besides the fact, like, oh, I'm upset, I paid full price for this game, this is too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think we just need to give people, like, the that language through which they can, I'd say, adequately describe their frustrations with these kinds of practices, because I think that's where you said people just say, oh, they're mad that they're paying for they're paying extra on top of the full priced game. But I think it's just they don't have the language to express how, maybe like to question the illegalities of these kinds of practices.
Right. Most definitely. What are you most looking forward to in the next Tekken game? What are you hoping for? What's on your Tekken wish list?
I think for one, I really wish that Tekken for one can stop trying to, I'd say, simplify the game by, I don't know, putting this I don't know, these basic combos kind of thing. I don't think that's the best way to introduce a new game to someone who might be trying to get into it on a professional level. I think they just need to finally put a proper tutorial that can get someone into the game and show them how, let's say how frame data works, how this move works.
Right.
And I'm happy they kind of put that punishment training mode where they took I'd say 10 to 15 punishable moves, which I'd say is a start in the right direction. But I feel that there needs to be more needs to be done to make sure that the game is actually accessible. As you know, Tekken has a rep for being one of the most, I'd say, difficult fighting games out there. And I think this is one of the reasons. There's no way to teach someone how to play the game right, especially at a professional level. Then I actually want them to, I'd say, rather than create, I'd say, new characters who don't really, I'd say, fit the game, I'd prefer if they put more stock into the legacy characters. And then I wouldn't actually mind paying for a season pass that had new characters, not legacy characters that I don't really. Legacy characters need to take, I'd say, precedent because they have more. I'd say they have more engagement with the actual storyline of Tekken.
Right.
So I feel if they put more stock into legacy characters and then leave the DLC, leave the new characters of DLC, that would be fine. Then let me be honest, I really wish they'd also improve with on their communication when it comes to like, are they going to update the game? Are they done with this game? Because it's been months since we've heard from them outside of the Tekken Online Challenge. So
yeah,
if they found a way to, I'd say, get a community manager who can, like, I'd say, give, I'd say, monthly updates, like this is what we're working on, and maybe we're working on this, we're working on that. Let's say the Tekken is coming back, that kind of thing. I think it would be a good thing overall, because I know some people are also quitting the game because they're just like, I'm done with this game. The developers haven't communicated. I'm tired of this power creep in the DLC characters, etc.
yeah, it's amazing how little sort of communication has happened, in a while from the Tekken, dev team.
And I know they may not want to announce something prematurely before they're really sure that, I'd say, it's up to standard. But I think when season 4 came out, I was actually happy because they actually changed some of the ways through which they communicated. Like fun with the balance list, they actually did a good thing from borrowing from the Project Soul counterparts, the guys who make Soul Calibur. They actually listed let's say, if they nerfed this move, they gave a reason. Like the spreadsheet was more detailed as to why they added this move, why they nerfed this move, why they buffed this move. It was a good thing overall. Then I think one thing I feel they could serve to borrow from maybe the Capcom developers is maybe like bringing back, let's say, like the legacy costumes, like let's say for characters like Anna, like from Asuka, like Shoyu. DLC costumes, I wouldn't actually mind paying for that also, if it meant like supporting my favorite game and making sure that they had, let's say, more money to make sure that the next Tekken game is better. And also, I think with this next generation, let's bit if I don't know if they're making Tekken 8 or Tekken Tag 3 or whatever, but the next Tekken game, I don't want to hear that it has lousy netcode, because with games like Guilty Gear Strive on the market and Mortal Kombat that have, let's say, reasonably good and or even better netcode, I think that should also be a priority, especially given that a lot of the tournaments are being run online. I should be able to play with my colleagues from North Africa, my brothers from West Africa and South Africa without too many problems.
What do you think could be next for the fighting game scene? I mean, there's Project L, there's DNF coming out soon. What do you think is the most exciting, or either of those two games more exciting to you? Can we expect you to play any of the new fighting games coming out soon?
Oh, definitely. I've seen the update that Riot Games gave on Project L, and I think given the reputation of Riot Games, especially when it comes to League of Legends, and these are and how I'd say the kind of the direction that they made, like they made League of Legends one of the, I'd say, the bigger esports games out there. I feel it could push the agenda of the FGC forward, in that we say that the FGC hasn't really, I'd say, taken to the esports aspect of professional gaming, and I know some of the reasons are legitimate as to why they guys haven't taken to it, but I feel if you're talking about guys making a livable wage from playing games at a professional level, I feel like these games will. I think overall these games should push that agenda forward, and I'm honestly excited to see how Project L adapts their games, and maybe how it raises the bar for how fighting games should be made.
Right. Will you be playing them?
Oh, definitely. I'm excited to see, and I hope the marketing of these games is also done in a manner that actually is inclusive of all regions, including Africa, because this is something I'd actually be excited to, see a community here, and a Project L fighting game community here. That would be really awesome, to be honest.
Right. I mean, it feels like you're trying to open up how people can support their favorite game or their favorite dev team, or how they can engage with it. Like, you know what I mean? Kind of opening it up a little bit more, giving people more resources to engage. And I feel like ultimately, not only will it benefit the community that plays the game, but it's going to benefit their bottom line, right? Of making more money and becoming more popular, right? Because they're giving people more content to work with.
Yeah. I think the whole reason why actually the existence of esports is because there are people who you can compete with, you can challenge yourself with, and you can actually, and given the how technology has advanced, let's say you find something interesting in the lab, you can actually share this stuff with other people online, like, so, or I found, let's say with Tekken, I found how sure you can beat this particular string from, let's say, Paul.
Okay.
I'm just giving a Tekken example,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
you
yeah.
put it on YouTube. Then you see hundreds or even thousands of people actually see that and share that, and it builds the community, and actually even introduces other people to the kinds of activities that you partake in. I've done that with my own YouTube channel, and I've actually allowed people who aren't in the community but actually still support me here in Kenya. See, this is what I do. So like, oh, this is what you do when it comes to like Tekken. Like, they don't have to understand it, but maybe they can share it out to their friend of theirs who actually games, and they said, hey, let me try Tekken.
Right.
That's how you build the community, and you actually you also support the game devs.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the future, and hopefully that's something that we can expect more of. And I think it's going to really happen because, people like yourself are, literally writing about these things, doing interviews with people, talking about the things. And I love talking with you because you talk about the things that Kai and I want to dig into, but not everybody, wants to dig into those things, but you do, because you believe it's more than just the competitive aspect. And I love that about, your personality. My last question for you is, where can people engage and interact with your work? How can they stay in touch with everything that's QueenArrow?
So on Twitter, you can just type QueenArrow in the search bar. I'm gonna pop up. I don't give the actual art because it's a whole different kind of story.
Yeah, it's a whole different
Yes.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so just type QueenArrow in the search bar. You're gonna find me there. On Instagram, on Twitch, and on YouTube, type the QueenArrow 98. You're gonna find me streaming. You're going to find me sharing all about my life on Instagram. And I'll also go back to updating my YouTube channel. So you can definitely engage with me there. And I also answer all my DMs as long as you're not being
Crazy.
yeah.
Yeah,
You
just
know,
if you're not crazy, Sylvia will respond to you.
yeah, as long as you're not being too crazy, I'll definitely get back to you.
Cool. Well, Sylvia, we really appreciate your time. QueenArrow, we super appreciate all the wisdom, information, and insight that you gave us, and we're going to be supporting you along the way. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you as well. It was really amazing talking to you guys, and I definitely enjoyed sharing my story and my perspective.